Time for some lunch?
Yes.
Great. So where are we headed?
It's a place to eat with pork chops as their specialty.
Okay. Well, this is the place, right?
Yes, this is it. 老板，你好，你好，你好。
How's this? Does this table work for you?
Yeah, you sit there.
Great, perfect. What do you think we should have?
You want to have this chicken thigh rice, pork chop rice?
I think I'll do the pork. If you're having lunch and you had to choose one thing, what's it going to be? Not just from here, from anywhere.
Well, normally I have soup noodle for lunch. Yeah, because it's easy.
So my mom comes from a family of 7 children. You come from a family of 11. But similar things in that kids eat a lot. So, I mean, what was like family dinner like for you?
Oh, normally it's a lot of food. And we not only eat with members of the family, we also eat with people who work for my father. The scale of the meal is, you know, in terms of people eating at the same time is phenomenal.
Right.
So my mom have to cook for 10, 20, or even 30 people on a daily basis.
Every day?
Oh, yes.
It's an incredible amount of cooking and food. Your mom sounds pretty incredible. Oh, good. Here's the food.
Oh, yes.
Lunchtime. Favorite part of being president? Worst part of being president? If you could narrow it down.
The favorite part of the president is, of course, you get an opportunity to manage the most difficult affairs of the country.
Yeah.
You make decisions, difficult decisions for the country, and it's a challenge. The worst part is there's no privacy, no freedom of speech, and you don't get to move around freely.
Yeah, you lose the ability to be a private citizen. But there must be something quite amazing about being in the position of power, being able to, you know, make your mark on history.
Yes, I guess so. I guess what I think is more important is making yourself a useful person for the country, especially when the country is in the most difficult time.
Here you are, sitting here as the president of Taiwan. But more than that, you are also one of the only female political leaders in the world. When I say that to you, what does that mean to you?
Being the female president of Taiwan is very meaningful. Taiwan is the first democracy in the long history of the ethnic Chinese world, and this democracy produced a female leader. In other words, women should not be restricted. There is no limit to what women can achieve.
And yet what we see, certain Chinese officials, certain state media, they attack you constantly, not just your policies, but personally. I mean, they use quotes as saying that you're emotional and extreme as a leader. And it's directly tied to you being a woman oftentimes. How do you not take that personally?
Such assaults happen every day. They come not just from China, but also from within Taiwan. Leaders, whether male or female, have to face a wide array of attacks. They often stem from false information or distortion of facts. Our most important task is understanding why people make these attacks and making sure we are not affected by them.
Is there a part of you that hates having to answer questions about being a female politician? Because as a journalist, I need to ask, is there not a part of you that wishes that female leaders were normalized enough that in every single profile interview you do, you wouldn't have to answer these kinds of questions?
Until female leaders are a normal and common sight, every female leader, including myself, has an obligation to answer related questions. Regardless of whether I like these questions, I believe I have an obligation to answer them on behalf of women.
With all of these people and all of these pictures, I mean, does that ever become normal, or is it still bizarre to you?
No, I'm quite used to it.
Yeah.
When I grew up, I didn't take many pictures.
Right.
And I hate taking pictures, actually.
You have to do it quite often now. So where are we headed now?
We're going to a very famous and popular place for snacks. Hi, 您好。你好。
You're probably, in addition to all of the smiling and the talking, you've got your wave down, right?
Oh yes, I mean, it's part
of the job.
It's part of the job. Oh. We have to be in the queue.
The president has to wait in the line. I thought we were going to be able to cut the line today. I thought that was one of the benefits.
Duck wing.
Duck wing.
And chicken neck. This is such a delicacy.
Yeah.
So this is yours. So
Thank you
tonight
so much.
in your hotel room, it's nice with beer.
This with beer. Okay.
And local beer.
So we just for the record, the president gave us permission to drink beer tonight.
Oh yes.
Right?
Yes.
Presidential. You heard it.
加油！你们从哪里来？
My team is gonna really appreciate this. Thank you.
Remember, Taiwan beer.
Taiwan beer.
All right.
You have that. That's the deal.
Yeah. See you
Thank
tomorrow.
you so much. We'll see you tomorrow. I wonder if I might get you to tell us something about yourself that maybe the public doesn't know. Did you ever skip a class in high school? What's your favorite karaoke song? I don't know. The floor is yours. Tell me something that maybe the public doesn't know about you, and maybe they'd be surprised by.
After so many elections, there's not much left the public doesn't know. But in answer to your question, yes, there were times I really didn't want to go to class, so I skipped it. As for karaoke, no one has ever asked me this before. I can answer that, yes, I've been to karaoke, but I never sang. Usually when I went with friends, I would bring a book and listen to them singing.
I wanted to ask you about your dogs and cats, who have kind of become famous in their own right throughout the campaign, social media. How much is being an animal lover, how much is having a full house of animals, 3 dogs, 2 cats, how much is that a part of who you are?
Of course, I greatly cherish these animals. My cats are rescued strays, and my dogs are retired guide dogs. Many in our society choose not to care for such animals. By doing this as president, I hope that others can follow my lead and make a greater effort to care for them.
It's not every day you see the leader of 23 million people taking a casual stroll down the street, but today she's with CNN, showing us the place she calls home.
From the Philippines.
Oh, like you said, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Welcome.
Time for some lunch? We're in Taipei with Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen, getting a taste of what the city has to offer. Oh, good. Here's food.
Oh, yes.
Lunchtime.
Try this. This is very good.
Yeah. Tsai was the first woman to be elected president of Taiwan back in 2016 and has undertaken an ambitious reform agenda. But it hasn't been easy. Her progressive push isn't popular with everyone, and Tsai herself isn't popular with the leadership in Beijing. But the woman who made history with her first presidential election wants to win a second. She'll seek re-election in 2020. Madam President, good to see you.
Yes.
Good to see you. This month on Talk Asia, we meet President Tsai in her first international network interview to talk about the growing tensions between Taipei and Beijing.
If it's Taiwan today, people should ask, who's next?
And the importance of the United States to Taiwan. Forgive the blunt question, but if China invaded tomorrow, would you count on the United States military to be there? We also go beyond Taipei as we get the rare opportunity to travel with the president across the island and tap into her more personal side. Madam President, welcome to Talk Asia. Thank you so much for joining us. We know that this is your first international network interview, and of course, with Taiwan, there is no shortage of things to talk about, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Earlier this year, you, as you always do, gave an address, and you specifically said that China must respect that Taiwan will never give up its sovereignty. Explain that a little bit, and do you ever foresee, under any circumstance, Taiwan reunifying with the mainland?
We
need to look at the current overall international situation and Taiwan's own situation. We are facing a China that is growing stronger and stronger, and its ambitions are also getting stronger and stronger. In fact, it seeks to become a world hegemony. If we look back, Taiwan has been a successful example with respect to the development of its economy, democratic system, and core values such as human rights and freedom. Under such circumstances, our greatest challenge is whether we can continue to maintain our independent existence and security, our prosperity from economic development, and our democracy. To Taiwan, this is the most important question at hand.
We've heard President Xi's rhetoric, never losing an inch of our motherland. We've seen his practice of increasing military drills around Taiwan and the Taiwan Strait. How have such threats affected your policy making here in Taiwan? And has his rhetoric forced you, has China's policies forced you to become more hardline yourself?
The military threats China poses on Taiwan grow every day. In fact, its military threat is not limited to Taiwan. It extends to the entire region. This has awoken us to the fact that we must continue to enhance our defense capability. We also hope that if we are threatened militarily by China, many neighboring countries and like-minded nations will come together in support of Taiwan. We hope they will safeguard Taiwan, this very important place in terms of security, industry, and free and democratic development.
Given that threat, given what we're seeing in Chinese state media, certain pundits in Chinese state media have been fueling speculation over an invasion sooner rather than later. How concerned are you about that scenario?
I don't think that any president or leader would rule out the possibility of military conflict. That's why we have to ensure that our military preparedness is at its best at all times. However, military action must come from a formal political decision. If the political cost is too high, I don't believe that the Chinese leader would rashly resort to military action.
To understand the delicate relations between Taiwan and China is to understand history. In 1949, the Communists, led by Chairman Mao Zedong, won the Chinese Civil War and established the People's Republic of China on the mainland, forcing the previous government, led by Chiang Kai-shek, to flee to the island of Taiwan. Both sides set up their own governments, each claiming to be the only legitimate ruler of the entire Chinese territory, and decades of hostility ensued. Tensions began to ease in the 1990s after Beijing and Taipei authorities began a series of dialogues designed to put aside the issue of sovereignty in favor of resolving more practical matters. That paved the way for economic and cultural cooperation between the two sides. But since Taiwan, officially known as the Republic of China, became a democracy in the late 1990s, relations between Taipei and Beijing have fluctuated, depending on which of the two main political parties is in power on the island. Bilateral ties have fast deteriorated since 2016, when the pro-Taiwan Independence Party's candidate, Tsai Ing-wen, was elected president. Beijing still insists Taiwan is a breakaway province that must be reunited with the mainland by force if necessary. President Tsai, on the other hand, has strongly rejected Beijing's claim, asking the Chinese leadership to face the reality and respect the freedom and democracy enjoyed by the island's 23 million residents. But with Chinese President Xi Jinping hardening his rhetoric and policies toward Taiwan, many people on the island are increasingly wary of the growing strength and ambitions of their massive neighbor just across the sea. Clearly, Beijing is trying to extract both a political and also economic cost on you as well, and your administration and Taiwan as a whole. Airlines, automakers, clothing lines, even the bakery, I believe, that you visited in California,
right,
has been pressured by Beijing to drop reference to an independent Taiwan. Do you find it frustrating, depressing, as the leader of Taiwan, that you consistently see those kind of actions from Beijing? And what do you think you can do to change that?
I think that perhaps China believes that by doing this, it would make the Taiwanese people feel even more frustrated, that it would lower our morale. In reality, if we observe the Taiwanese people, every time such an incident occurs, we all become very angry. What I want to say is that such actions by China actually have the opposite effect on Taiwan.
Taiwan and the United States have no formal diplomatic relations, but they remain close allies. So what does that mean? Washington severed official ties with Taipei back in 1979. The U.S. now recognizes Beijing as the sole legal government of China, but considers the status of Taiwan unsettled and encourages both sides to engage in dialogues to resolve their long-running disputes. Taiwan and the U.S. don't have embassies in each other's territories, but they have maintained close cultural and commercial ties. And since 1979, despite strong protests from Beijing, the United States has sold billions of dollars worth of weapons to Taiwan, arming the island to defend itself against a much larger Chinese military. When Donald Trump was elected U.S. president in 2016, he broke decades of protocol and took a congratulatory call from Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen. U.S.-Taiwan relations have since grown warmer under the Trump administration. In 2018, the U.S. president signed into law the Taiwan Travel Act, which encourages official visits between the two sides. Washington has also approved the sale of sophisticated submarine technology to Taiwan, further angering the Chinese leadership. Starting with then President-elect Donald Trump, he accepted, in an unprecedented move, a congratulatory call from you shortly after the election in 2016, before he took office. How surprised were you that he took that call, and what did that signify to you? Did it signify something greater, or do you attribute that to the inexperience of a newly elected leader who's not familiar with cross-strait relations?
非常感谢有这个机会可以跟美国的总统
I was grateful to have this opportunity to speak directly with the President of the United States. Through the phone call, we hoped to congratulate him. We also briefly exchanged ideas on bilateral ties. This was the first phone call involving the presidents of our respective nations since we broke diplomatic ties with the United States 3 or 4 decades ago. But there was something more important than the content or fact of the phone call. The call was meaningful because it bolstered communication between the US and Taiwan. This means more effective communication at a higher level. With this, bilateral ties can advance, or the likelihood of progress grows. So I was grateful to have this opportunity, as it meant we are communicating at a higher level, even if it isn't always at the presidential level.
And yet we do know that Donald Trump is an unconventional U.S. president. That's one way to put it. Many would consider him an unreliable ally of Taiwan, given how we have seen him buck other international norms throughout his presidency. Are you concerned that the United States represents an unreliable ally, especially given the current priority in making deals with the mainland? How would you address those concerns?
我们了解任何一个总统在做他的决策的时候
We understand that any president, when making decisions, has to consider many factors, especially the interests of his or her own country. In this vein, President Trump has consistently stressed America first. As for how we manage relations with the US or other countries, looking at our current situation and with the pressure from China, the level of uncertainty is indeed relatively high in many regards. We are very accustomed to dealing with such uncertainty and making sure that it does not fundamentally affect our decision-making model.
So with the Taiwan Travel Act, with the United States' approval to sell certain submarine technology to Taiwan, we have seen signs that the U.S. military, the U.S. government, is strengthening its ties with Taiwan. That said, what we also hear is President Xi routinely using the kind of rhetoric saying that he will never renounce the use of force. So forgive the blunt question, but if China invaded tomorrow, would you count on the United States military to be there?
我想
Our defenses are well prepared for an attack at any time, for any situation where we would need to fend China off for 24 hours. So looking at Taiwan's defense capabilities for this kind of situation, we are capable of holding off any first wave of attacks. So I think that for China itself, after its first wave of attacks, it would have to respond to international pressure and the shock to its own economy. So we would hope that after withstanding any first wave of attacks ourselves, other countries throughout the world would stand up in unison and put strong pressure upon China in response.
And you are confident that they would do so led by the United States?
Yes, 如果今天是台湾
If it's Taiwan today, people should ask, who's next? Any country in the region, if it no longer wants to submit to the will of China, they would face similar military threats. So I don't think any attack is something that Taiwan would have to put up with purely on its own. It would reveal China's proclivity, showing that China will not hesitate to use military power in seeking to promote its expansionist ambitions. So under such circumstances, not only Taiwan's interests would be impacted, the overall interests impacted and the potential damage would be regional or even global.
I just wanted to ask you, I guess, while we're on the plane, about the rigors of the job. Does the relentlessness of the work ever get to you, you know, in terms of having to constantly be on call and doing things every day?
Well, once you get used to it, it's a life of every politician, I guess, especially elected politicians. You have to prepare to meet with different people at different times.
Is there anything you look back on your first couple of years in office and say, that's a regret or that's a disappointment, something you wish you could have or should have done differently?
That is a tough question.
Sure, understandable.
I think for the first and the first half of the second year, I spent too much time in managing the government affairs. And I also spent a lot of time in making foreign visits to our diplomatic allies. If I regret anything, I would say, yes, for the first 1.5 years, perhaps I should spend more time to go out and to meet with people and talk to them, and so that they can get a sense that this is the politician that we are familiar with.
Madam President, thank you so much for your time. I know we don't want to take up too much time up here, and I know you have work to do. Thank you again.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.